When I got to the table, I froze. As I watched my wife's jaw drop, a hole formed in her mouth, giving her an unsightly aspect. Douglas began to stand up, but I quickly raised my hand to suggest that he should stay put. "No, Douglas. Stay where you are for as long as you're sitting. You are safe. But if you stand up, I'll have no choice but to dig my fangs into your throat," I warned. "Please, sit down. I do not want to cause a scene. I apologize for disturbing their sensitive time." I sensed the strain in the air. "Julia, I'm extremely startled to find that you claimed to be sick so that you wouldn't spend the weekend with me, all in order to be with that vile Douglas, in my opinion. He truly represents the lowest of the low. It's difficult to think you chose him over our unique spot. When we first met, I proposed to you, and we enjoyed many lovely experiences. This place used to mean a lot to me. However, its allure has faded, exactly like you. On our wedding day, you made vows that you clearly will not keep. I promise to never intentionally hurt you or do anything that will cause you to stop loving me. But I'm worried these commitments may have already been broken. I am severely upset and my feelings for you are diminishing. It feels like a betrayal." "Julia, you understand me better than anyone else. You are aware that I approach things as a systems analyst. I watch, evaluate, find problems, and seek solutions. In this scenario, it appears that you wish to date other guys, as demonstrated by your connection with Douglas. I am your husband, and I do not let you date other men. So clearly the issue is with me. My solution is to fix the issue, so that is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, you are free to date anyone. I hope this meaningless friendship is worthwhile." "Julia." Turning to Douglas, I added him. "Our case is not yet over. I will see you again." I walked quickly to the exit and stepped outside. I hurried across Michigan Avenue and around the corner to the Drake Hotel's lobby. Julia hurried out of the spa and onto the sidewalk, and I watched from a distance. Her gaze darted in search of me. Even with our best efforts, she couldn't see me. Defeated, she sighed and walked across the street. I was perplexed as I flagged down a taxi that was supposed to take her to our house, but I took comfort in the fact that I had disrupted her plans with Douglas and that she cared enough to look for me. She would have been disappointed to discover that I wasn't present. I waited a few more minutes to see what Douglas did. He soon got out of the car, hailed a taxi, and drove away in the opposite direction. I decided to spend a few days at the Drake Hotel while I figured out what to do with my life, so I went in and was able to rent a room. You're probably wondering how we got to this point, so I'll explain everything. My name is John Barton, and my wife's name is Julia. When I graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, I began working as a software developer at Grace System Solutions in Chicago. It was a pleasure working for Greg Gray, the company's owner and boss. He was a fair and beneficent leader, allowing me to quickly advance up the career ladder and achieve success in my position. Greg first introduced me to Julia, his goddaughter and the daughter of his closest friend, at the annual Christmas party. It quickly became clear that Greg had set up this meeting with the intention of bringing us together. I couldn't help but thank him for that, because the moment I saw Julia, I was overcome with a sense of love at first sight. Julia fascinated me, and I thought she was the most amazing woman I had ever met. Her wit, humor, and all the other qualities I could want in a partner fueled my passion. Nobody could deny that I was madly in love with her. Our bond was instant and undeniable, and we quickly became inseparable. It all began with a spa party, which quickly evolved into our special place. 3 months later, on a romantic Saturday date at the spa, I proposed to her without hesitation. She rushed into my arms and said, "Yes." Our marriage was a dream come true, and our lives got better every day. We both had successful careers and frequently celebrated them with dinners at our home. We got married in the 10th year, and everything was perfect until about 6 months ago. I felt like the honeymoon phase was coming to an end, even though I knew it wouldn't last forever. I couldn't help but feel something was wrong. I was certain that nothing strange was going on, but the nagging feeling of lost romance was difficult to dismiss. I decided to take matters into my own hands and begin planning a covert trip for us. My good buddy and former roommate, Adam Hartley, worked in the software sector with his father, Ben, who happened to be a client of Greg's company. I planned our vacation to coincide with one of my frequent visits to their Cleveland offices. Our destination was Cleveland, where we were scheduled to meet Adam, Ben, and their wives, Caroline and Gloria, for dinner Friday night. We had a quick business meeting on Saturday morning, and then we planned to spend a couple of days together in Niagara Falls. I wanted to rekindle our love and enjoy a romantic second honeymoon. Julia appeared to have reservations about going, and I had to persuade her of the importance of going, despite her reservations. I hope she'll love the surprise. On Friday morning, I discovered Julia had vanished from her bed. I looked for her and discovered that she was sleeping in her extra bedroom. I asked gently, "Julia, are you awake?" She stared and responded, "John, I got sick last night and moved into the spare room so as not to worry you. I'm terribly ill and need to rest. Could you please phone my office and inform them that I will not be there today?" I did. She asked, and I let her sleep while I went to work. When I contacted her at 10 a.m. to inquire about her health, she informed me that she was still feeling bad. I said, "Well, I realized I'd have to travel to Cleveland alone," when I got no response. I ended the conversation and called Adam's number to advise them of the change of plans. Adam suggested canceling the trip to Cleveland because Julia would be unable to attend, and instead both couples should come to Chicago to meet me on Friday evening. Then we could spend Saturday shopping along the Magnificent Mile. If Julia feels better, we could have supper together on Saturday night. I was ecstatic about the idea and told him I would reserve a table for them at the Drake Hotel and have dinner with them at the Spa, the restaurant across the street, at 6 p.m. I instantly canceled my flight, my hotel accommodation in Cleveland, as well as all automobile arrangements at a hotel in Niagara Falls. It was unfortunate, but things may change at 3 in the afternoon. I called Julia to check how she was doing and asked if she wanted to join us for supper. Unfortunately, I received a busy signal when preparing a presentation for Adam and Ben. By 5:30 p.m., I had attempted to contact her again but received a voicemail. I left a message outlining her plans before immediately walking out the door to meet the Hartleys. When we were sitting at the table, sipping cocktails before the meal, Adam's expression abruptly changed. He came to me and said, "John, I'm sorry to break the bad news, but Julia just entered the restaurant with another man sitting behind you on your left against the wall." With a sad heart, I cautiously turned around in my chair to face her. And there she was, with none other than Doug Simon. The sight of them together made me angry and resentful, feelings I knew would never go away. In brief, he left my sister Barbara at the altar and subsequently said they didn't want to marry. He swiftly married another lady and had a child, despite my view that she would be better off without him. Barbara is still reeling from his treachery. That is why I dislike and hate him. But let us concentrate on the now. I was startled, to put it mildly. I attempted to talk, but all I could manage was a stutter. Everyone's sympathetic reactions confirmed their shock. Finally, I found my voice and said, "This is quite unexpected, isn't it?" It was evident that I couldn't continue the evening with them while pretending I hadn't seen what we all had. I urged them to continue their plans and proposed we meet for breakfast the next morning at 9:30 a.m. in the hotel cafe. I am confident I will feel much better by then. Unfortunately, Julia and I will be unable to join you for dinner tomorrow night. I sincerely apologize and seek for your forgiveness," I replied quietly. I hugged the women and men who were old acquaintances and proceeded to where my wife was sitting. I realized Adam was following me, assuring me that everything would be all right, but I knew it wouldn't be. I appreciate his compassion for me. We returned to the tense talk at the table. I found myself in my room at the Drake Hotel. I had switched off my phone during registration but felt it was time to put it back on. Julia had left a few messages, but I, like others in my situation, deleted them without listening. I ignored the last voice message and let the phone ring, sending it to voicemail. I didn't want to hear what she had to say. After deleting the message, I switched the phone off again. On Saturday morning, I met with Adam and Ben to talk about our business connection. I informed them that I was expecting significant changes in my life and was unsure what they would entail. I asked them not to sign the new deal Greg signed. I requested for time to cope with issues in my marriage and at work. Greg, as you are aware, is a close friend of Julia's father and godfather. Perhaps you will have a better opportunity in the future, if you can wait. If not, we will reconsider the situation, Adam proposed. I completely get what you're saying, But I don't see anything wrong with you continuing your monthly contacts with Greg until my future is more secure." "What say you?" I asked. Adam responded, "We will do as you ask. Greg and I are working together only because of you. What if your circumstances change? We will always be here for you. Please let us know what has to be done when the time arrives. We are ready to assist you in any situation." Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged them both tightly. At that point, the ladies entered the restaurant. It's time for the women to convince their husbands to go shopping. Adam's wife, Caroline, grinned mischievously and said, "Come on, darling. Your credit card is a touch cold, and I believe it should be warmed up." Gloria, Ben's wife, added, "I hope Ben's card can withstand the heat, because we will be withdrawing money from them today." So frequently that they may simply melt. It's not every day that we get to shop down the magnificent mile. Despite my feelings, I couldn't help but laugh at their fun banter and appreciate their efforts to lift my spirits. I adored them for that. After exchanging hugs, they departed. I pondered going to the office to get some things organized, but I hesitated because Greg would be there on Saturday and Julia might expect me to show up. As a result, I opted not to travel and instead planned to arrive at the office early Sunday morning to figure out what needed to be done. I spent the remainder of Saturday afternoon engaged in a book I had recently purchased. The next morning, I arrived at the office and completed various jobs before leaving. I made a plan for what I want to do on Monday morning. Back in the hotel room with the Chicago Tribune, I began browsing apartment rental ads. Realizing I couldn't stay at the Drake indefinitely, I began calling and scheduling appointments for Tuesday morning. When everything was ready, I relaxed and began watching football. The next morning, I met with Roger, my longtime lawyer, to discuss the possibility of him representing me in the divorce case. Roger reassured me, "God knows, John, it will be easy for me to introduce you." "I cannot believe you are divorcing Julia. You love her more than anyone I know," I replied to Roger. The key word here is loved. I'm using the past tense because I no longer feel that way about her. If you don't want to represent me, that's okay, but please do not represent Julia. Roger agreed and stated that he would prefer not to represent either of us. He suggested I try to work things out with Julia, but if that's not possible, I'll invite Jacob. My lawyer is an Eastern man. He thought Jacob would excel at this task. Roger advised me to try to make peace with Julia before making a final decision. I thanked him for his recommendation, but made it clear that I had no chance of reconciling with Julia because my feelings for her had shifted. Then I met with Jacob, who assured me that all of the necessary paperwork would be completed by Tuesday and Julia would receive the lawsuit on Wednesday. After that, I went to the bank and received a cash receipt for half of our savings, leaving the remainder in our joint checking account to cover current expenses until the divorce was finalized. Julia and I had a predetermined financial arrangement. Every month, we contributed a fixed amount to cover the total operating expenses. In addition, each of us contributed a set amount for food and entertainment when purchasing furniture and equipment. Over time, the fund to cover these expenses grew significantly because we consistently contributed more than we spent. Throughout the divorce proceedings, this fund remained untouched to pay bills. In addition, each of us saved about $500 per month in a separate account to cover vacation and holiday expenses. After the divorce, I plan to withdraw my 50% share of the savings account. We have complete control over our personal income and can invest and spend it however we see fit. Our investment accounts were separate, managed by different brokers, and we were unaware of each other's account values. Similarly, we made separate plans. The only general financial information provided was the monthly deposit into our checking and savings accounts. I took the cash receipt to another local bank and set up new accounts for myself. I deposited $25,000 in my checking account and $155,000 in my new savings account. I also took care of other financial details like insurance. After that, I went to the office to deal with the situation. As soon as I walked into Kelly, the secretary informed me that Greg wanted to see me in his office right away. I thought, well, it started. He called me inside, saying, "Come in, John," and closed the door. After Julia's call, I was perplexed. What happened? I explained the entire situation to him, and he asked what I planned to do next. I said confidently that I was going to file for divorce. When I asked for his opinion, he responded with arrogance, insisting that if I wanted to keep my job, I should reconcile with my wife rather than file for divorce. My choice was clear: establish a relationship with my wife or face the consequences of being fired from my job. Go figure it out with Julia or consider yourself fired. Greg, friend. I pretended to be shocked and raised an eyebrow before answering. Greg, do you really think that my value to the company depends only on my personal life with Julia? Are my efforts and dedication obvious enough? Didn't I adhere to the company's rules and policies? Knowing Greg, I recorded our conversation on my phone. John, you are a valuable employee of the company. Your work ethic is impeccable and you always follow the rules. Greg admitted you played a role in the development of the company's policy, so I believe that you adhere to it. But Julia is my goddaughter, and I have to tell you that if you don't solve your problems with her, then I will have to fire you. Do you understand the gravity of the situation now? Greg asked. I realized that he was trying to put pressure on me, but decided to turn the situation around and confront him. Although I restrained myself from smiling inwardly, I felt a sense of satisfaction in a gloomy tone and with the pained expression on my face. I told Greg that he would have to break the news that I was ending my marriage with Julia. Although he looked stunned and disappointed, he eventually made the decision to fire me from my job. I asked him to assign a guard to accompany me to the office, where I intended to pick up the remaining things, anticipating the situation. I had already taken some things on Sunday. Greg and I had a long working relationship, so I knew him well. Arriving at my now former office, I selected only a few things to pack them in a small box taken from the pantry, as I was about to leave. Greg noticed the photo of Julia and me on our wedding day. She was standing there in her stunning wedding dress, and I couldn't help but feel sad. I have to admit that I didn't look so bad in a tuxedo either. Tears welled up in my eyes when I picked up our photo and whispered, "I've always liked this frame." I carefully removed the back of the frame, put it in the box with my things, and threw the photo into the basket. As I turned to leave, I was greeted by Julia's shocked expression and tears streaming down her face. She clearly noticed how I got rid of the wedding photo and understood the consequences of my actions. In a low voice, she asked Johnny, "Can we talk?" I briefly paused my departure and replied, "We have nothing to talk about, Julia. You've already betrayed me or are about to. You broke both the promises you made on our wedding day. You hurt me so deeply that you broke my heart, and you did something that made me stop loving you. As they say, you can't fix a broken heart. What should I do now? Do you really believe that I can forgive you for betraying me? Do you know how much I despise Douglas for what he did to Barb? And yet you cheated on me with him. It's unrealistic to think that our marriage can survive this. No, Julia, there's nothing more to discuss here. I left my workplace and left Julia's life. I called Adam Hartley and informed him that Julia and I were getting divorced and that I had been fired from Grace System Solutions because of this. I informed him that I was developing an advanced system security program that would surpass anything Great currently provides. I explained that I needed a few months to finalize and implement it and asked if he would agree to stay on a monthly basis until Gray provided the new program. For the past 2 years, Greg has not allowed me to do programming, instead entrusting me with the maintenance of the system and solving all issues related to customer service. As a result, I've devoted my personal time to coding and am already close to completing the project. If I hadn't been fired, I plan to turn it over to Greg as soon as he could see improvements over his current program. Now that I'm no longer working there, I'll have the freedom to market it on my own. Adam noted that he would need to consult with his father before giving a final answer, but he was sure that they were ready to give me a few months to finalize. Judging by their assessment, they could implement this into their business. 4 days later, I was able to move from the hotel to a beautiful apartment. Although the monthly rent was very high, I had the financial reserves to last a few months. After moving, all my days were occupied with writing and testing code for 10 to 12 hours in a row. Despite knowing that the project would soon be ready to enter the market, I felt obliged to bring it to completion in order to live on. It was at this time that Julia received the divorce papers and repeatedly contacted me in the hope of talking about it. I've listened to all her voice messages, but I haven't found anything worth discussing with her. In one of the messages, she confessed, "Johnny, I have to admit that I might have thought about being with Douglas if you hadn't intervened, but I've never acted in that direction. I don't know what I was thinking, but I still love you. Could you give me a call?" she implored. "Johnny, I still adore you, and I don't want to get divorced. Please call me," she continued. "Johnny, can we find a way to get through this and stay together?" she pleaded. "Johnny, I miss you dearly, feeling like I was tired of everything." I contacted Jacob and requested him to contact Julia's lawyer, warning him that I would pursue a restraining order if her behavior did not change. Shortly after that, I received a message from Julia. "Johnny, I love you, and I simply want to fix things and spend the rest of my life with you. I'm astonished that you're pursuing a restraining order against me. But if that's what you think you need to do, and I'll respect your decision, this will be the final message I'll send you. I love you more than anything in the world, but I understand that the option is now in your hands. I'm sorry I caused you so much anguish that you can't even speak to me. My love for you is unshakable, and when you're ready to help, I'll be there." Julia expressed regret that, as promised, I had not received any further texts or phone calls from her. The end outcome did not meet my expectations. It felt like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage, even though we are not yet divorced. I was deeply saddened to learn that what had happened. I spent 3 difficult weeks working on my programs, devoting many hours to them every Friday after lunch. Jacob called me. He informed me that we had a court hearing planned with Judge Janice Caldwell for next Wednesday morning. Jacob expressed his anxiety, adding that Judge Caldwell is known for being a difficult judge in divorce cases, sometimes putting people to lengthy procedures before issuing a divorce, if she provides one at all. We arrived at the courtroom and saw Julia and her lawyer. Our matter was reviewed within a few minutes after entering the courtroom. After we had taken our places, the bailiff called the hall to order. Everyone got up when Judge Caldwell entered and took her seat, welcoming us as we sat down. She then turned to me. The applicant in the divorce case approached me and asked if I wanted to dismiss the action and attempt to save my marriage. I politely declined, indicating that I wished to pursue the case. Judge Caldwell expressed some disapproval but eventually agreed with my judgment. Then she turned to Julia and asked Mrs. Barton if she agreed with the choice to divorce, or if she would rather try to reconcile with her marriage. Julia responded without hesitation, "Your Honor, I do not want a divorce. I adore my husband and plan to save our marriage." When the judge analyzed the petition identifying irreconcilable differences as the basis for divorce, it became evident that Mr. Barton's proposed settlement arrangement was fair and free of the malevolent intent that is common in such circumstances. The judge inquired as to why the petition contained such an unusually low level of hatred. "Your Honor, I have no ill will toward you. I have no intention of harming her and am entirely committed to finding a fair settlement. I must acknowledge that I no longer have the same love for her as I did before," I explained, leading Julia to choke and sob. The judge intervened, expressing hope that with the correct support, the couple may address their issues and reconcile. As a result, the judge scheduled 3 sessions of marital counseling with a highly skilled psychologist. The main points are 1 first session and 3 separate sessions for each party in 2 joint sessions. The only exception would be if the consultant informed the court that the marriage could not be saved. The judge declared and slammed the gavel to signal the start of the following case. I wanted to disagree, but Jacob interrupted me and suggested John to attend the first session and see if he changed his mind. If not, make it obvious to the counselor that you wish to dissolve the marriage and see what occurs next. Unfortunately, the talks turned into a disaster. Julia begged, apologized, and pleaded with me to reconsider our divorce and work to rebuild our marriage. The consultant paid close attention to what I was saying. He did not seem to sympathize with my decision to dissolve my marriage. He questioned John, "Could you explain why you don't want to work on your marriage?" I answered, "Dr. Graham, let me tell you a story. Some may think it's a fairy tale, but it is not. I was attending my company's Christmas party when I noticed a female across the room. Have you ever felt love at first sight? Because that is precisely what occurred to me. My boss introduced me to Julia, his goddaughter, and I knew right away that she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. The despair that had been in her eyes only a few minutes before vanished, replaced by a lovely smile that captured my heart. Our connection rapidly became passionate and intense, as if we were made for each other. 3 months later, I decided to ask her to marry me, and our love story began. I believed we were ideal for each other, but with a sigh, I realized that perhaps perfection is an illusion. Despite this epiphany, I was determined to continue on my adventure with Julia by my side. Mr. Graham, I fell in love at first sight. My emotions did not emerge gradually over time. They were instantaneous. This direct connection should help you understand my psychology, don't you think? If love can emerge in a moment, it can also vanish just as swiftly. Julia was dating another man, but I trust her when she says they were not intimate. I believe the incident could have escalated if I hadn't acted. She betrayed our marriage in every sense of the term. Going on a date with another man is considered a betrayal, regardless of how you look at it. Even worse, she selected Douglas, the slime of the earth, my sworn enemy. It wasn't simply some random man. She knew how much I despised Douglas. She was aware of the full tale about how he upset my sister Barbara. But she decided to cheat on him anyhow, to top it off. They had arrived at the pinnacle of their romance, the location where we first met. We got down on one knee and asked her to be my wife. It was a spot where we shared many moments, and I anticipated celebrating her first pregnancy and welcoming our first kid. But when I saw her sitting with Douglas, his hand caressing her face as they raised their glasses for a toast and a smile on her face, I understood the love of my life had betrayed me to my deadliest adversary. At that point, my heart shattered, and the love I had for her began to fade. As I approached their table, I could feel an emptiness in my heart. By the time I left the restaurant, the emptiness had absorbed all of my feelings for the lady who had once been my everything. All of the love we had shared was gone. That's why I can't stay married to her. Document. There's no love left, and I refuse to stay in a marriage without love. It may sound heartless, but it is true. I finished the story. Unfortunately, Julia's sobs touched my heart. However, they were unable to change my feelings. I didn't love her anymore, and I had to end her marriage. Julia, I apologize. I don't mean to harm you, but do you understand what I'm saying? It would be unfair to you if we stayed married, and I do not love you. Dr. Graham stated that our session would conclude today, but I believe we had covered all of the necessary topics. I am confident that with the help of individual consultations, we will be able to make progress and maybe rebuild our relationship. I will propose that the judge continue these sessions. At that point, I was outraged. After hearing all I've just said, I'm not going to continue with the consultations. It's ludicrous to believe that this marriage has any chance of surviving. If you feel it is important to continue consultations, do so with Julia and omit me. I yelled and exited the office, frustrated that someone could be so forgetful. A few days later, the court sent me a letter scheduling 3 individual consultations. After missing the first session, I was brought to court, where Judge Caldwell convicted me in contempt and fined me $500. She informed me that if I skipped the next consultation, I would be imprisoned. I informed her unequivocally that I would no longer attend consultations. True to my word, I did not attend the next meeting and was arrested by a police officer. What a gorgeous setting. It wasn't every day that a lawyer approached me and tried to get me to come in for a consultation, but I refused. On the 3rd day, an unexpected visitor arrived. Greg, my former supervisor, paid me a short 15-minute visit. He expressed sorry for my current circumstances and stated that he had not supported me when I needed it the most. Greg suggested he had a solution for my situation. If only I'd let him help me cope with it. If you consent to individual counseling, Judge Caldwell will release you from prison. Following that, we can meet to discuss how to resolve your issue. I simply ask that you not forget about the potential of returning to my employment in the future. However, you do not have to promise this. He proposed for the first time in a long time. I felt optimistic. Greg had always been a decent buddy and treated me fairly until the incident with Julia Rose. I promised to comply with his request while also committing to consider returning to work for Great System Solutions. The court scheduled my first individual session for the following day, and I was led home by a police officer who waited while I prepared for the meeting. I showered, shaved, and dressed. Then he joined me to the session and stayed until it completed. The session consisted of a normal psychological study and a survey. I attempted to be as accommodating as possible. At the end of the session, Dr. Graham walked me out and updated the officer. Mr. Yang demonstrated a willingness to collaborate and agreed to attend the next session, which was planned for a week later. The officer then told me that I may leave, but that if I missed the next meeting, I would have to face Judge Caldwell again, which I would rather avoid. The officer emphasized the seriousness of Judge Caldwell's angry behavior and advised me not to miss the upcoming meeting. I contacted Greg and agreed to meet him at my apartment the following day. We spent the entire morning discussing his proposed plan and making the necessary preparations before moving on to lunch. After the meal, we reconvened at the table to discuss my potential future at Great Systems Solutions. I told Greg that, while I had always appreciated and valued our friendship, I needed to prioritize my own interests. I reminded him of the time I received my last promotion, and he advised me not to pursue programming. You once told me that my system, maintenance, and customer service skills are too valuable to devote to programming, but I am passionate about programming. Greg, I'm working on an advanced security program that outperforms everything on the market today by 4 generations. I can assure you that this is a truly innovative development with the potential to revolutionize our country's security systems. Given the recent issues with hacking retail chains, my new program will make such hacks completely impossible. But believe me, it will improve the situation. I only have a few months to test my program on actual company data. I believe the program will be ready for implementation in 3 to 4 months. I confessed to Greg, have you already reached an agreement with Adam regarding testing? Greg asked. I smiled and responded, Greg, I will never deceive you. Yes, he agreed to try it. He's only doing this because of my friendship with him, and if my program is successful, he'll most likely leave you with a better understanding of the situation. Greg inquired as to how you intend to get around your contract's non-competition clause. The non-compete clause is invalid because I did not resign and was not fired for a legitimate reason. You fired me because I refused to solve my personal problems at work, so there is no issue with the non-compete clause, I responded. He chuckled and joked that he could make up problems at work if you wanted, but he quickly added that he hoped I would return to work with him. I chuckled at his comment, which appeared to irritate him. Greg, I replied calmly, I recorded our conversation and you fired me. You confirmed that there were no work-related issues and that my dismissal was solely due to disagreements with Julia. I have a recording of this conversation. Why did you feel compelled to record it? John asked Greg. Because I know about your strong feelings for Julia and suspected that you would do everything possible to prevent me from divorcing her. I responded. Fair enough, Greg said and continued the conversation. I am confident that the new software I have developed will bring me great wealth, and I am ready to share this success with you. Greg, uncertain conditions. I am ready to return to work for you on a permanent basis while maintaining my current responsibilities for working with clients. But I will no longer be responsible for system maintenance. You will need to hire a manager who will report directly to me, as this is closely related to the new program. I am sure that as soon as you master the new software, you will be delighted with the results. In the future, I plan to devote about 40% of my time to developing the program. Although I will work for you full-time and receive remuneration for creating my current and future programs, I will retain sole ownership of these programs. In exchange, I am ready to grant you an exclusive license to promote and sell my programs with a pre-agreed royalty rate that will be paid to me. Greg, I appreciate that this may appear bold, but I am confident that if you are convinced of the potential of my work, you will find this agreement helpful. Together, we have the potential to accomplish great achievement. I agree to the terms of this offer and instruct their corporate lawyer to conduct the deal. It should be mentioned that if the agreement does not match my expectations, I have the right to discontinue our agreement. In this situation, I shall request that you change the royalty percentage to a more profitable one. Greg agreed. Unfortunately, I missed the last consultation, so I was detained by an officer and transported to court in handcuffs. The officer smirked as he warned me about the repercussions of my behavior. When Judge Caldwell entered the courtroom, I observed her blazing red skin, steam pouring from her nostrils, and fires in her eyes. It was obvious that she was angry. Mr. Barton, it appears like you've crossed the boundary again, she announced. I believe you disrespected the court and were sentenced to 30 days in prison." Julia, who was curiously present, suddenly interfered and pleaded with the judge. "No, Your Honor, please reconsider," she implored. "I drop my objections to John's request for divorce. Please please him," when Judge Caldwell stated, "It's too late, dear. He will spend time in jail." Period. I couldn't help but feel angry. When she spoke those words, saliva appeared to flow from her mouth. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I stood up and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to address the court." The judge gave me a severe look and said, "You have no right to address me directly. You've got a lawyer for that." Feeling strong, I turned to Jacob and stated firmly, "Listen, you're fired. From now on, I will exhibit myself with newfound confidence." I approached the bench, ready to defend my point of view. Julia's lawyer also approved the request. "What is the issue, Mr. Barton?" the judge inquired. "My Honor, I'd like to request a brief meeting in your office to handle this matter once and for all. I believe that if we hold this meeting, we will be able to reach an agreement that will satisfy all interested parties." I stated that the judge had agreed and said, "Good. The lawyers will be meeting with me in my office in 10 minutes. I am taking a little break." When we met in the judge's office, I requested that the meeting not be noted in the minutes. The judge hesitated, but I interrupted her before she could respond. "Your Honor, I have reason to suspect that you and Julia's counsel would prefer not to discuss some points in public, so once again I request that this be done off the record." I suggested she gave me a long look before nodding, instructing the court recorder to leave the room. "Very nicely, Mr. Barton. Finish your speech." "Let us listen to him," she said. "First and foremost, Your Honor, I do not want anyone to be wounded during this process. Please believe me. I have cause to suspect there was a court infringement here. I do not want you to be wounded and have your career wrecked," I began. "I also do not want Julia's parents' marriage to break up, and I don't want Julia to feel insulted by anything. Although I no longer have feelings for her and do not want to marry her, I also do not want her world to collapse. It is evident that there is evidence of your relationship with Julia's father, which means you should withdraw from this case. The evidence is undeniable and fairly evident. Although I can offer this evidence and testify if necessary, I would rather avoid this route. I would like to offer this material to the Judicial Council, but I am hesitant to do so. I do not want to inflict any further hurt to anyone engaged in this. Julia will be profoundly wounded, and I'm not sure your marriage can take such a hit. My only goal is to finish the divorce without causing extra sorrow." I turned to Julia's lawyer to obtain his view. "What are your thoughts?" I asked. He turned at Judge Caldwell and remarked, "Your Honor, I have always admired your dedication to preserving marriages that can be saved. You were quite tough in certain instances. I apologize for being blunt, but I understood your motives. If Mr. Barton's testimony is true, I will be sad to find that you had an affair, and even more so because you did not dismiss the case like him. I do not wish you any harm. I believe you should grant him a divorce." Turning to me, he said, "Mr. Barton, all I ask is that you sit down with Julia at the negotiating table and hear what she has to say. You told the consultant that your heart is broken, and I understand your pain. It's crucial to recognize that her heart is also hurting. Please give her a few minutes of your attention. If you approve the divorce, there is no need to discuss it outside of this room." Julia's lawyer stated that when we reconvened in court, the divorce was approved and the property division decision was finalized. Each of us maintained our investment accounts and received 50% of our savings. It was decided that the current account would cover all bills until the divorce was finalized. Following that, Julia would retain ownership of the house and agree to live there indefinitely with no obligations. In the event of a sale, we would split the net proceeds evenly. The judge overturned the original sentence of 30 days in prison and imposed a $500 fine, which I immediately paid. Julia clearly needed to maintain her reputation, so I agreed to meet her in person in a room adjacent to the courtroom. Julia apologized again, expressing confusion about her actions. She assured me that she would seek the advice of a psychologist until she could understand her behavior, despite her requests for forgiveness and declarations of love. I no longer had the same feelings for her. I hugged her before leaving the room, and I could hear her sobs echoing down the hall. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked on creating a new security program that was almost ready to be integrated into Adam and Ben's system. Julia called me about a week before my trip to Cleveland to share some news. She decided to sell her home and received an offer of $555,000. Julia wanted to give me the opportunity to buy it before accepting the offer. She offered to sell me the house for $280,000, allowing me to outbid the other offer. I refused, claiming that I didn't need the house. I told Julia to proceed with the sale and send my share of the proceeds to my lawyer. You will deliver all of the necessary documents for the sale and transfer the funds to my account. Then I asked her why she was selling her house. She explained that she was leaving the city for a new job and needed to start her life over. She also mentioned that she had learned about her father in court and that while she understands that I do not wish harm on anyone, it still hurts her. I wished her luck with her new job and said goodbye. 2 weeks later, the transaction was completed. When I joined Adam and Greg's company, I had my security software package ready for testing and deployment. Adam greeted me with a warm hug, expressing his enthusiasm for the new system and eagerness to get to work as soon as possible. He introduced me to the secretary, John, and then Julia. Confused. I looked at Adam and asked him what was going on. He smiled and explained that Julia was the new administrator. You probably know how talented she is, so I'm sure it won't be difficult for you to implement the new security package with her, Adam said. Although I was caught off guard at first, I informed him that I would need a computer workstation to complete some tasks for the rest of the day. I would work with Julia to some extent, but my main focus would be on preparing the package for installation and implementation. It was important that the computer had internet access. Having calmed myself down, I must say that the day turned out to be quite pleasant. I've always admired Julia for her wit and intelligence. Julia remained as humorous, beautiful, and funny as ever. It was a pleasant day spent with my best friend, wife, and lover. Julia's efforts to be close to me, communicate with me, and subtly touch me did not go unnoticed. I couldn't help but feel the impact of her actions. I missed her more and more every day. At 5:30 p.m., we said goodbye to each other with heavy hearts, saying, "See you tomorrow." She left sitting in my hotel room. I considered my next steps and finally decided to take a bold one. I opened my laptop and expertly hacked into the company's computer system. It is common practice for programmers to create a backdoor just in case. I managed to get access to the personnel documents and found Julia's address. Then I went to the liquor store, bought a bottle of her favorite wine, and went to her apartment. When the doorman asked about my visit, I confidently stated that I had come to see Julia. I told him I'd come to see Julia Barton, but she wasn't expecting me. He tried unsuccessfully to call Julia's apartment, and I assumed she must have gone out to dinner. I asked if I could wait for her, and he directed me to a small break room located to the side of the lobby. Soon, Julia came in with a man who hugged her and kissed her as they walked to the elevator. The doorman, suddenly realizing my presence, approached them. He spoke to Julia and gestured in my direction as I walked toward them. I heard Julia begging, "Oh my God, no, please, no, no, no." Well, it started again. "I always seem to be able to interrupt your dates, Julia," I said with a hint of apology. "I'm sorry I showed up uninvited, but of course you're glad I came," I added, handing the man the bottle of wine. "Have a nice evening. You too." As I was leaving, Julia hurried after me, begging, "Johnny, please don't go anymore." But I continued on my way back at the hotel. I immediately sent Julia an email to a workplace. In the message, I expressed my surprise to see her in Adam's office. It quickly dawned on me that she must have quit her job, sold her apartment, moved to Cleveland, and joined Ben and Adam's team to be by my side. It may sound presumptuous, but it seemed to me that you wanted the opportunity to reunite with me and maybe be together again. I suspect Greg may have influenced you by informing you of my location and projects. Although it doesn't shock me, I don't like it when he interferes in my life. Despite this, I was sincerely glad to see you. I must admit, I missed our friendship. Today's time spent with you brought back good memories and made me feel satisfied. I didn't want our conversation to end, so I made a spontaneous decision to take a bottle of wine with me to continue our conversation outside the office. I needed time to gather my thoughts before continuing, but I was stunned when I saw you with another man. I felt confused and unsure. It seems contradictory that you were making efforts to rebuild a relationship with me, and at the same time, you were already involved in a romantic relationship during your short stay in Cleveland. This situation leaves me with only two possible explanations. Either you are really not interested in resuming our relationship, or there is something else that I do not know about. Regardless of whether you stick to the idea of being with me or dating other men, I'm getting out of this situation. I doubt in my decision to divorce you, but your behavior convinces me that it was the right choice. It pains me to realize that I almost bought into your false concern. It's quite obvious that you only care about yourself. I hope that in the future you find true satisfaction and happiness. Please don't try to resume relationship with me. You appear to assume that I have no place in your life. I wish you all the best, Julia. I also sent another email about installing the software, attaching a file with extensive instructions on how to activate the security program. A 2-word password is required to access the file under the security system. If you remember our last meeting at Spire, it should be straightforward. If you can't recall those 2 words, maybe Adam can help you because you heard them. 2. The passwords, in effect, were like broken promises. These 2 words are necessary to access the security system. I may have been a little immature, but who cares? Every time you check in, you will remember how you ignored our marriage. I loaded the package on the server, and following the instructions, you just need to activate it and set additional access codes and passwords for other users. Everything is detailed in full in the instructions. If you have any troubles in the future, email Greg. He will connect you with the team that helped me work on the program because I will no longer work there. Good luck. I completed the letter. Men who have departed a relationship with a deceptive spouse may discover a younger, more attractive, enticing, clever, and insightful companion than the one they left. This new spouse may be more open to intimacy and remain faithful permanently. I thought I'd discovered such a woman in Julia before she violated our marriage, but that was not the case. I became depressed after leaving Group System Solutions, despite the fact that I continued to get considerable royalties from the licensing for the security packages that Greg marketed. This money was no longer important to me. My self-esteem had plummeted, and I was experiencing a lack of self-confidence, which was unusual for me because I had always been confident. I realized I had a problem and took the appropriate steps to seek help. I started seeing a psychologist, and after a few sessions, I began to feel more like myself. I continued therapy, but not with Dr. Graham, and gradually felt like I was on the right track again. I began dating, but nothing meaningful came out of it. When my finances were in order and my life improved, I decided to accept things as they were and not rush into falling in love again. It had been 5 years since I last saw Julia. I did not want to see her or hear about her. I remarried a lovely woman who gave birth to 2 sons. My daughter. Adam recently told me how things are with Julia. She is completely in love with her new husband, with whom she shares a 1-year-old kid. However, not everything is as good as it appears. Her spouse, Nick, is a highly social person. Nick prefers a wild lifestyle and occasionally brings young women home from nightclubs. Julie attempted to quarrel with her husband, but nothing came from it. Neither Greg, her godfather, nor her influential father could assist her with this issue. They merely urged Julia to be patient because Nick's powerful father possessed an advantage over Greg. Julia's life had transformed into a nightmare before her eyes. Her husband began having intimate encounters with other women after they married, and she had little control over it. When I learned about it, I couldn't help but smile. Julia deserved this type of life. After all, karma exists. Story 2. When I pulled into our garage, I felt a surge of anxiousness. I knew I would be late and Jim would be concerned. I mentally rehearsed my excuse, attempting to make it sound reasonable before confronting him. I never planned to lead a debauched existence. However, 6 months later, I discovered that I was addicted to the intensity that my lover instilled in me, despite my love for my husband. Samuel overpowered me, and I could not resist him. I tried to end my relationship with him, but couldn't get out. I tried numerous times. He's really charming and understands just how to control me, forcing me to disregard my own beliefs and decisions. Every time Jim finds out about this, he will most certainly be furious. I hoped that if things became really terrible, I could persuade him not to divorce and forgive me. I even devised a strategy for this case. That is how low I have plummeted throughout my 6-month affair. I changed and went to great lengths to avoid failure. Jim, my loving hubby. I was constantly frightened that he would find out the truth and throw me out of his life and house. but I was confident that he would not betray my secret. I tried to be physical with him anytime he expressed interest, even when I wasn't in the mood, because my feelings for him were so intense. I do love him at times. Sometimes I feel bad and wish I could go back in time and stop my desire to Sam from evolving into a physical connection. I immediately remember spraying myself with Jim's favorite perfume before leaving for work in the morning. Fortunately, I avoided suspicion by making up a story about inadvertently spilling cleaning solution on myself while hunting for Kleenex in the closet at work. Jim believed my story after one last look around. I departed when I arrived home. I paused at the front door and searched the neighborhood for Jim's pickup truck. To my astonishment, it was parked on the street in front of our neighbor's house rather than in its normal location. Something wasn't right. He normally parks in our driveway, but today was different. Looking out the window, I noticed Jazelle scrutinizing her image in the rearview mirror. It was a long day for me, and her tardiness further exacerbated my unhappiness. This was becoming a regular occurrence, rather than an isolated hiccup. I wouldn't mind if she was actually where she claimed to be. However, the reality was different. This had been going on for months, and it was now impossible to ignore. I tried several methods to get her back, but she showed no desire to reconcile with me. Despite knowing about her affair, I chose to keep it a secret. I believe she should terminate it herself so that our relationship has a chance. I attempted standard gestures like dinners, movies, and gifts, but I also went creative and made a one-of-a-kind trinket shell for her one Friday. I surprised her by picking her up from work and sending her on a romantic weekend away from town. She wandered where she wanted, rejecting my attempts to initiate a talk about our relationship. The weekend I spent in the city began with her yelling at me, but by the conclusion I believed we had made progress. But the following week revealed the opposite. Disappointed. I began criticizing her working hours and work, which made her even furious. Our intimacy dwindled significantly, then further, and finally even more. What used to happen frequently, several times per week, and at least 3 times on weekends, has now become uncommon. It's been a week and a half since the last intimate moment, and 2 weeks since the last romantic encounter. Despite my understanding of the circumstance, she did not appear to notice the absence of intimacy between us. I discovered her infidelity 5 months ago, but she successfully avoided my questions and presented unconvincing arguments for why she showers at work. She had no idea I was following her that day, and she knew the real reason. She showered and then did nothing related to her job. When I discovered the truth, my heart broke. But my feelings for her remained strong enough that I wanted her back. She was the woman I hoped to have children with, the person who captured my heart from the moment we met. Now, the task ahead did not appear to be too difficult. I didn't think long about how she'd react to my departure, imagining her seeking comfort from her lover and laughing at me together. They have been playing the fool all along. How could a husband compete with a lover who did not have to do the usual chores for his wife? How could a husband ignore his wife's infidelity with her lover while failing to make an honest effort to return her? I tried everything, but I couldn't. I'm going to have to tell her tonight that I need to leave town right away. This isn't the first time I've used this excuse, but it's certainly the last. You will probably wonder why I didn't meet her in person. If I'd informed her that I'd caught her, she would only regret getting caught. I caught her, but not because she planned to leave me. I hoped to get her back without acknowledging her betrayal, believing that it would prove her love for me. But now it became clear to me that my plan had failed. She didn't know that all my things were packed in a truck. My bank accounts were divided. My job was abandoned, and a new job offer came from a friend on the other side of the country. I even arranged for the cancellation of the mobile phone. I paid off the debt under the previous tariff plan, agreeing to a fine to avoid calls from her in the future. When my old phone was only a week away from expiring, I felt relieved. My savings flowed smoothly into my new employer's savings plan, and the retirement plan with a cash balance. Remain safe. Despite the benefits, quitting the job was bittersweet. I had strong connections with my colleagues, and I liked the job itself. It was difficult to part with them, the employer and the clients. After much thought and effort, I came to a difficult decision that Jazelle completely ignored. She was too engrossed in her novel to notice that she had pushed me away. Or maybe she just didn't care. In the end, it didn't matter anymore. The divorce papers will be delivered to Jazelle next Friday when she will either be at work or with her lover. You may ask, am I really leaving her? Yes, I'm leaving. The pain of facing her infidelity is too much to bear. I know that now that we are taking action, she will regret her actions. I was scared of the thought of having to beg and ask her for forgiveness. I didn't want to seem desperate, like a pathetic beggar begging her for at least some crumbs of affection. All I wanted was for her to understand how much I love her, and for her to remember the love we once shared. I wanted her to understand what a mistake she had made by leaving me for someone else. But despite all my efforts, I lost her to another man. A man who I knew wasn't right for her, who I knew didn't treat her with the love and respect she deserved. I can only hope that eventually she would see his true faith, that she would regret her decision to leave me. I knew that the pain of losing me would hit her hard, especially when the divorce papers were handed over. That's when she'll see the truth that she made a mistake by leaving me. And when that realization came to her, I hoped she would come back to me, begging for forgiveness. Up to this point, I had planned to call her every night as usual, in the hope that she would not realize that I was using the phone at the motel, or would be too worried that I was not using my cell phone. I assumed she wouldn't even notice because she always looked too preoccupied to have a real conversation with me. I didn't understand what she wanted from me. I couldn't understand why she started an affair and why she was continuing it. And I wasn't sure how she really felt about me. It was clear to me that she couldn't love me the way I once loved her. Before all this chaos started, if she really loved me, she would never have gotten involved with another man. But she had been dating him for several months and was not going to stop. Despite all my attempts to get her back, I eventually accepted defeat. But the reality was obvious. He won and I lost. Disappointed and angry, I started making up a fake story to hide my emotions. When Jazelle came to the front door, I retreated to the kitchen and got a cold beer, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I desperately needed a distraction, trying to calm my racing thoughts. It was extremely important for me not to spoil my plan right now. After consulting with the lawyer, I knew what the court would require for our divorce. I had a feeling that Jazelle would take this news with relief, because it seems that she has already moved away from our relationship. I can almost guarantee that she will ask her lover to move in with her as soon as the divorce papers are ready next week. I tried to close the doors of the cupboards and drawers, preparing for the coming changes. A casual glance from her side would not have revealed the emptiness that now filled my closet and dresser. I wondered briefly what she would feel if she discovered this emptiness. Would she feel anything at all? How would she react if she saw that among the remaining clothes there was only the one she gave me when she entered the house? She hugged me with a smile. I turned my head, allowing her to kiss me on the cheek, a gesture that has become all too familiar lately. She didn't mention it before, and she didn't mention it today. More than 2 weeks have passed since our last intimate meeting. She clearly did not notice the lack of intimacy between us, absorbed in the passion she must have received from her lover. "How is your day?" I asked, feigning interest in her well-being, but really just playing the role of a loving husband she can rely on. "Everything was fine," she replied, her concern about my obvious distress forced and insincere. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Her answer was automatic. "Yes, I have to go to work again. I'll be gone for a week." "I'll leave in the morning," I said, studying her for any hint of reaction when she started to smile. I noticed how she quickly changed her expression to a more serious one. "Oh, honey, on Saturday." "You have to go tomorrow," she said anxiously. Despite her words, her eyes betrayed the truth. She seemed relieved that I would be gone. It was obvious that she was glad of this, perhaps looking forward to spending more time with her lover. "Yes, it's going to be a long week. The work has already finished and I need to monitor the construction." I explained. I felt relieved that she accepted my life so easily without getting angry. Like before, I've learned the answer briefly and simply, unlike the detailed explanations she's been giving me for months. For me, it was a sign that something was wrong. Her excuses became too specific, which aroused suspicion. One day I had to leave for work and she did not protest as before, which seemed strange to me. Soon after that, I found out about her affair and everything fell into place. We had dinner and relaxed in front of the TV, she and her usual armchair, I on the couch. I did not lose hope that at the last moment she would change her mind and would not allow me to continue the path I had chosen in the morning. After a couple of hours, it became clear that this was just wishful thinking. The realization hit me like a brick. We had lost everything. She sat there, ignoring me, never once meeting my sight. It seemed like I was invisible to her while she was lazily watching TV. I could see that her thoughts were absorbed by her beau and their plans for the week ahead. If only she knew that tomorrow I would be gone forever. And as I sat and watched her watching TV, the weight of my decision pressed on me. He has no idea I'm going to have an entire week with them. We can spend the night at my apartment or at his place. We're going to have a lot of private moments, and every night he will invite me to dinner and dancing. I shouldn't think so, but Jim's vacation will be exciting for me. He will leave, and Sam will be at my disposal. It's going to be wonderful. My plan for the last great week just got much better. Go ahead for next week. As soon as Jim gets home, I can finally forget Sam and focus on my relationship with Jim. Everything will come into place. In the evening, I tried to establish intimacy with Jim, but found that he was comfortably snoring. He fell fast asleep again. His work had been demanding for the past few months, but I couldn't help but wonder why he hadn't had an intimate relationship with me for so long. And scary thought immediately occurred to me. Perhaps he was cheating on me with somebody else. I wondered if I had overlooked any indicators that he had discovered my adultery and cheated on me in vengeance. I saw no indicators as I watched him sleep. I was confident he loved me, and then I started to question my adultery again, wondering why I was still connected to Sam. He paid me attention, took me dancing, was sweet in bed, and reminded me of Jim with his moans. But it was the tiny things Sam did that drew me to him. Jim adored me, and it was clear in our intimate moments. I appreciated the difference. Sam and I have a passionate chemistry that fulfills me in more ways than one. He not only meets my bodily requirements, but also looks after me emotionally. I enjoy our evenings together, whether it's dining at a restaurant or dancing all night. Sam is constantly attentive and compassionate, and being with him makes me feel like the most important lady in the world. When we return to his house or hotel room, I want to show my gratitude for the incredible experience that we shared, regardless of how much time we spent together. I can't get the feeling that I'm drifting away from Jim. Perhaps it is time to end this intense affair. I'm terrified that he'll discover my infidelity and abandon me, abuse Sam, or worse, both. Jim has recently made extra attempts to be a loyal husband to me, which has given me cause for concern. Could it be that he knows about my infidelity and is attempting to outdo my lover? I instantly disregard this distressing thought. If Jim discovers the truth, I know he will react rashly, potentially endangering Sam. It concerns me to think that I'll have to bail Jim out if he behaves irresponsibly. I wasn't sure how Jim would react if he found out about my adultery, but I was certain he'd leave me immediately. This week brought the end of my relationship with Sam. Regardless of how much I enjoyed them, I realized it was time to focus on my spouse and her intentions to establish a family. When I awoke in the morning to an empty bed, I felt apprehensive and terrified. I persuaded myself that Jim would probably leave without saying goodbye so as not to disturb my sleep. My kind spouse, Jim, looked after me, recognizing my exhaustion and offering to let me sleep longer. Although his call that evening was wonderful, it couldn't compete with the reality that he was at home with me. After speaking with him, I understood that Sam was already on his way here. That night, I planned to go on a date with Sam, and we were most likely to finish up at either his or mine. I usually carried a mobile phone with me, and Jim frequently called me on it. Despite the fact that Jim appeared busy during our talk, I realized that his mind was probably preoccupied with work when he had to leave town. He was typically preoccupied with work, and he had little time to think about being away from me. This arrangement was suitable for both of us. I acknowledged and understood his need to prioritize work. I was prepared for Sam's arrival when he knocked on the door. I left the garage door open, allowing him to drive into the closet and stroll to the terrace's back door. I sat completely naked on the kitchen counter, waiting for him. This time, his appearance did not send shivers down my spine because I knew exactly what awaited me. As soon as he opened the door and looked at me like this, "Jazelle, are you here?" His strong and dominating voice elicited a response from me, stirring up a familiar feeling inside. When he entered the room and gazed at the scene before opening up to him, the expression in his eyes spoke volumes, ignited a fire within me, making me even more impassioned than before. "Sam, I am here waiting for you. Can we finish some business before we go to supper and dance? It seems like I need it," I admitted, desire apparent in my voice. It was evident that I had sparked his interest. "Oh, Jazelle, you're so gorgeous," he said, his words tinged with want and thirst. His hands carefully fingered the buttons on his shirt. His lips were moist with longing. The yearning in his eyes was apparent, which was one of the reasons I allowed this affair to continue for so long. On the other side, Jim had not gazed at me with such passion in a long time. He was always quite disrespectful to me. Sam was chuckling at my arrogance, a freedom I could never have with Jim. Something about Sam made me feel comfortable enough to participate in his teasing. Finally, we had a shower together before heading out to supper. Despite the fact that I disliked Sam, I emphasized that this was our final week together. Despite this, he was nevertheless able to instill in me a wild and dangerous spirit. I never considered the ramifications of my conduct. I didn't think my actions would undermine my husband's affection for me. I was completely caught up in the moment, needing the thrill and illicit pleasure that Sam had given me over dinner. We were sitting in a dimly lit booth in the last row, and Sam couldn't stop touching me. After dinner, he took me to a popular elite club for dancing. His hands were on my back, drawing me closer to him. I could feel the warmth expand between us, starting a fire within me. At that point, all thoughts of remorse or consequences vanished, replaced by a primordial hunger that devoured me. The music swirled around us. I succumbed to the intensity that consumed us on the dance floor. I lost myself in the forbidden joy of the moment. We were playing a deadly game, but at the time I didn't care. I was lost in the thrill of dance. Revel in the thrill of the forbidden. Sam's hands were on my back, and I wondered what Jim would think if you saw this personal touch. When Sam's activities were apparent, the image of my husband faded swiftly. I observed that numerous women close were giving us envious looks, while a small percentage were looking disapprovingly. Later that night, back in his comfy bed, Sam made passionate love to me, continuing to pleasure me for the third time. My phone immediately rang, requiring me to respond with a silent gesture to Sam. "Hello, this is me. I'll be back later than intended, but I wanted to let you know. My spouse told me." "How's the travel going?" I asked quietly. He responded, "What time are you scheduled to work tomorrow?" I kept asking questions so he wouldn't assume I was alone. "It's quite early. I'm going to bed now. We will talk tomorrow. Love you. Good night." My hubby said his goodbyes to me. Sam was distracting me as I was talking on the phone with Jim, so I missed his comments about love. My thoughts were quickly interrupted when Sam quickened his speed. I was absorbed in my pleasure, and thoughts of Sam and his expertise consumed me for the rest of the night. It was a new experience for me. I felt really seductive while Sam was making love to me, and I was talking on the phone with Jim. The next week went by swiftly, and Sam spent his evenings at my place. We usually made passionate love during the day before going out to dinner. After exhausting ourselves with intimate moments, we fell asleep until it was time to get up and start the day. As I laid there, I felt a pang of remorse. A married lady committed to a man who was not my husband. The level of thrill I was feeling was addictive, igniting a burning passion in me all week. But deep down, I knew Friday would be the end of our illegal affair. I decided to end my relationship with Sam, take a weekend off, and plan to meet Jim. I needed to make apologies for my infidelity and reassure Jim that I loved him. I arrived at my new home early in the evening, having driven faster than I should have. I went above the speed limit, attempting to move the ruins of my shattered marriage as far as possible. Terry, a longtime friend, and his wife have developed a profitable business through years of hard work and dedication. He has been aggressively contacting me, attempting to get me to join the team by exchanging ideas, letters, emails, and phone calls. He went to my wedding, carried the coffin during my father's death, and has been a close buddy since high school. Pam, his wife, was a great woman with a high self-esteem. I couldn't help but think of my wife, Jazelle, and wish she had Pam's loyalty and love. Pam Size was always full of love for her husband, Terry, and their commitment never faltered. Unlike her, I have not seen that light in business eyes in at least 6 months. In my new position, I will be involved in programming. I have significant skills in this industry, as proven by the fact that after graduating from university, I was approached by huge corporations, such as Microsoft and Sunday. My master's thesis in college was about a passionate programming project that I'd been working on for quite some time. I decided to share this idea with Terry as it approached completion. This finally led to my involvement with Terry and Pam's firm. I hope to receive a big income for the first time in my life now that the divorce is finalized. I've spent the last few months carefully planning every aspect to get rid of Jazelle at the proper time. She no longer deserves to be a part of my plan or achieve the success that was promised. I have tolerated her adultery for far too long, but the results of my efforts have finally arrived. The knowledge of this hit me hard, creating a flood of emotions. I felt a combination of grief, rage, and immense despair. I couldn't help but wonder why I was never enough, as the inquiries persisted. But I didn't want to hear any more excuses or justifications from her. Our task was finished by dawn on Monday morning. I arrived at my new work and was met with unexpected kindness. Terry introduced me to the team, which consisted of 14 people who emanated warmth and positivity. There were 3 men and 11 women, not including Terry, Pam, and me. Despite the lack of a clear need for a hero, I was treated as if I were one poised to save the day. I was appreciative for their assistance in arranging my new living place. After all the craziness of the move, I was relieved to have a place I could call my own. As I adjusted to my new surroundings, I realized that I was most concentrated on my work. The activities engrossed me and kept me from thinking about Jazelle. I was resolved to move forward without dwelling on the past. Despite the demanding schedule, I was appreciative to Terry and Pam for their support and efforts. The transfer phase went far more smoothly than I anticipated. As I finished unpacking my belongings, I felt at ease. My new home became a shelter, a place where I could start over and put the past behind. I was eager to embrace the fresh beginning and see where it would lead me. I couldn't believe my luck when I arrived to a 3-bedroom house. It had everything I could have hoped for. Furthermore, I didn't have to pay rent. I only needed to spend one night at a motel before moving in. Surprisingly, I felt just at home. My new neighbors, Pam and Terry, welcomed me with open arms and invited me to dinner twice that week. They instantly saw the hardships in my personal life. Pam adopted the position of a caring mother hen, always fussing over me and attempting to alleviate any troubles I encountered. Terry intently observed her behavior. She was a rare gem, always looking after me. She took care of me and tried to date me. Terry and I worked hard to calm her down. I was not interested in any other relationships at the time. I needed to finalize the divorce and take some time for myself to figure out what I truly wanted in life. Dating was not a top priority for me in the foreseeable future. On Thursday, my lawyer called to advise me that we would be delivering Jazelle's documents to her workplace the following day. Everything had been settled, and the bailiff would bring the documents to her by name. My lawyer also remarked that she had some intriguing DVDs from the previous week that could be valuable to me. It appears that Jazelle and her lover are up to something awful. Regardless of what was ahead, I knew I could rely on my lawyer to handle the situation efficiently. She was a first-rate lawyer, well known for her knowledge and success throughout the city and state. Her assurance put me at ease, and I felt I was in capable hands. I was excited to hear her news the following evening. Other lawyers shuddered at the mention of her name as an opponent's lawyer in the harsh world of court disputes. She was a true predator, a force to be reckoned with. Her reputation was unparalleled, so it was a stroke of fate that I was able to secure her backing. Initially skeptical, Amanda, my lawyer, was convinced that I had told the truth regarding Jazelle's infidelity. After realizing that Jazelle had breached our marital vows and was uninterested in reconciliation, as well as uncovering her secret boyfriend, I persuaded the man to take my case. Amanda insisted that I engage her as an attorney. Over time, I discovered that Sam had caused marriages to end several times, yet he always avoided the consequences of infidelity in divorce. Amanda was filled with a strong desire to confront Sam, a man so alluring that even the devil would pale in comparison. It became clear that Sam not only preyed on others, but also compelled his victims to engage in increasingly dangerous behavior, eventually bringing them down a path resembling prostitution. He utilized ladies to increase his company's sales, settle debts, and provide more services. I knew Jazelle hadn't seen that side of him yet, but I was confident she would in time if she continued to spend time with him. I also knew Jazelle would soon regret her involvement with him. Unfortunately, by the time she discovers this, it will be too late for me to save her. Sam behaved consistently. He targeted women who were susceptible in terms of beauty, self-confidence, or behavior. It was one of those instances when he devoted his time to getting to know them, cheering them up, having an intimate relationship with them, and then becoming their lover, manipulating them into working for him. He may be slick, that is for sure. Amanda really wanted to teach him a lesson, and it appeared that my marriage would be the means of his demise. The week went on, and every night I contacted Jazelle. I had trouble pretending to be interested. By Thursday evening, I realized that this was my final call to her. I also knew she'd make every effort to contact me the next day after she was served. Fortunately, my old phone would not be in use by then. Jim called me on Thursday and seemed gloomy. I also felt remorse throughout the week while on my date with Sam. I've been thinking about how to end it, but it shouldn't have gotten to that point. On Thursday, I experienced a sensation of loss. Although I couldn't specify what was hurting me, I had a sense that something was amiss in my life. It was like an inner feeling, a nagging sense of uneasiness that I couldn't shake. The atmosphere between us has also shifted. Jim appeared detached and almost relieved as we spoke, yet there was tension in the air. He called, but it seemed as if he expected me to do all the talking. And as we said our goodbyes, his response was chilly and final. Looking back, I recognized I needed to struggle to keep him around. I should have apologized to him and not allowed him to go on that vacation. They say hindsight is 20/20ths, and I now see how true this is. I put my anxieties to the back of my mind and hung up, having the fortitude to inform Sam that our time together was coming to a close. I needed to get things done before my spouse returned in a few days. I wanted to ensure that no traces of Sam remained on me or on myself. There is no odor and no evidence remains. That evening, the phone call kept me distracted from my thoughts, but eventually, I dozed off. It was Friday, and I was at work, when, right before lunch, everything changed in an instant. I heard a man in an ill-fitting dark brown suit say my name. His gaze was stern as he approached me. "Jazelle Hartman, what is the matter?" I asked. "Yes, can I help you?" I responded quickly. "You've been sued," he announced, and my world crumbled around me. I had no idea what I was being sued for, but I knew something was very wrong. He turned around and fled in a panic, not looking at the envelope he had handed me. I called Jim. He was always able to get out of difficult situations. I trusted my husband to handle this situation for me. I attempted to call him, but to no avail. When I attempted to contact Jim via speed dial on my mobile phone, I received an alarming message stating that his number was no longer in service. Worried, I looked up this number in the subscriber list and dialed it manually, hoping it was simply a technical glitch with the phone company. I was greeted with the same message again. A sense of fear gripped me. A cold shiver ran down my spine, triggering a wave of anxiety. In a moment of panic, I made a decision to contact Jim's boss, Stephen Sedgwick, also known as Steve. "I can't get through to Jim. Do you know where he is staying?" I asked. "Hello, Jazelle, this is Steve. Jim doesn't work here anymore. His last day was last Friday. He found another job and moved to a permanent place of residence," Jim's boss replied. I was stunned and sat in disbelief, holding the phone to my ear. Did Jim quit as he left, sitting at my desk and not knowing what to do next? I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. I realized that I had embarrassed myself in front of Jim's former boss. The fact that even his own wife didn't know what was going on within made me look stupid in front of all outsiders. The brown envelope looked ominous, like a snake ready to attack. When I finally plucked up the courage to open it, I was confronted with the devastating consequences of my betrayal. I have lost the man I love, my husband. I pushed him away from me with a senseless affair that can never replace what I had with Jim. It was a moment of temporary pleasure that cost me everything I should have let him be by my side for the last 6 months. I can't say for sure how long. I sat at the table and sobbed, but eventually a colleague noticed me and took me to the ladies' room through tears. I told Mary about the situation. At first, she was furious at my husband for his obvious cruelty, but after I told her my version of the story and the reasons for his departure, her anger turned to me. "Are you stupid or crazy?" she exclaimed. "Jazelle, this man adored you. He cherished you. He was completely fascinated by you. And did you do that to him? You must be crazy to let a catch like Jim slip away like that. What were you thinking? Even on the worst day your lover could match Jim. Stupid woman." "I feel sorry for you," she continued. "I didn't expect Jim to find out about it. I just wanted to have fun," I replied bitterly. But husbands always guess they noticed when you start behaving differently. All cheaters get caught sooner or later. It all starts with the little things. Perhaps you started ignoring your husband in small ways while your lover made you feel desirable and attractive. Before you knew it, you were completely immersed in the novel, not noticing how much pain you were causing your husband. Jazelle, Jim knew all along. He felt that something was wrong and most likely revealed the truth. "You were too absorbed in your deception to notice it." Mary said. "Oh my God, have I lost him?" I sobbed. "Maybe. Or maybe there's still hope," Mary suggested. "You have to talk to him. He needs closure. He's going to need it. Perhaps you have a small chance to earn his forgiveness. Maybe you won't forget." "But forgiveness is possible," Mary continued. "Today he filed divorce papers with me. He's been acting weird all week, and now he's not even answering my calls. I lost him. You would never have left like that. Quitting his job and everything else. If he hadn't left me, why didn't I see this coming? Why did I keep seeing Sam? Oh God, I ruined my life, my marriage, everything." I sobbed again. "You will definitely do it, Jazelle. Trust me, I know you can do it," Mary said. "Why are you so sure?" I asked because I was in your place, facing the same difficulties. I had a stormy relationship to my partner, dumped me, causing chaos and pain. But I persevered. Mary said, "Have you been unfaithful to your spouse too?" I asked, stunned. "Yeah, I didn't notice subtle changes in my behavior towards my husband until it was too late. This is the danger of infidelity. At first you try to hide everything. You find yourself behaving atypically for you, and all because you are afraid of the consequences of your husband finding out about your infidelity. Over time, you begin to feel confident, believing that you are able to deceive him. This false sense of security makes you forget about guilt and start showing more affection for your husband. Eventually, you begin to doubt your husband's masculinity because he still doesn't notice your infidelity. It dawns on you that he may have known all along. In one day, he presents you with evidence, leaving you in shock. Just like today, the truth has finally been revealed, and you can only wonder how he managed to reveal your secret. My lover and I even recorded a movie on DVD together. Our lawyers fought a fierce battle against the divorce. I begged my husband to give me another chance, promised to change, and confessed my indissoluble love to him. But my efforts were in vain. As a result of the divorce, I lost everything that was dear to me, my husband and his pure love for me, his beloved queen. I tainted our once perfect love by making forgiveness impossible, even for myself. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't be able to forgive myself either." Mary concluded her narrative. "Oh my God, he's gone." I began to complain again. I was left all alone. "The situation doesn't look promising to you right now, Jazelle, but if you make an effort, you may be able to gain his forgiveness. He truly cared about you a lot, and everyone knows about it. If you make a real attempt, you may be able to influence his attitude towards you." Jazelle Mary continued to soothe. "I have no idea where he is now. He left his job and moved in a week ago. His current whereabouts are unknown. He may be anywhere in the world." I replied, "We'll locate him eventually. He'll have to show there, even if it's merely to obtain the divorce papers," Mary proposed. "By then it will be too late to rectify the situation." I said, "Contact his lawyer and request that Jim contact you as soon as possible. He may not tell you where he is, but if he phones, you can use the phone number to find him down." She replied, "And what happens if he doesn't respond?" I complained. "There are several modern ways to find people. Jazelle, we will find him, absolutely." Mary tried to maintain an optimistic and encouraging demeanor. but she was deeply concerned that Jim had departed for a specific reason, most likely linked to their upcoming divorce. Mary sympathized with Jim's reluctance to contact with his future ex-wife, understanding that he was afraid to appear weak. Thinking about reconciliation, she experienced a similar situation with her husband, who was embarrassed that he had let his cheating wife manipulate him into having a heartbreaking chat about their relationship. Mary understood Jim's circumstances better than anyone else, knowing directly what obstacles had to be faced in a deteriorating marriage marred by betrayal. Mary tried to persuade him not to get a divorce, but he refused and left her. Neither of them had remarried since, and Mary was certain her ex had not even looked at the dating app. Their divorce was finalized over 2 years ago, but Mary's pain has not subsided. After her own difficult divorce, Mary was resolved to do everything she could to assist Jazelle in dealing with her grief. She knew all too well how heartbreaking it was to receive divorce papers, and she empathized with Jazelle's anguish. Jazelle needed Mary's help more than she could have expected, and Mary was ready to support her friend at all times. She knew it would take time to heal, but she was determined to assist Jazelle get through this terrible moment in her life. I'd been working for a few weeks when I received the call. Amanda, my lawyer, informed me that Jazelle wanted to speak. She refused to sign anything and was determined to save the marriage. I didn't see why she was resisting, especially since she already had the man she desired. I received the impression that deep down, she was hurting because I discovered the truth, dumped her, and filed for divorce. I may disagree with what you did, Jim, but I understand why you did it, she explained. In the end, she will oppose prolonging the issue until it gets pricey in terms of legal expenses. I advise we speak with her and persuade her to abandon the case. Perhaps she will see the gravity of the situation and choose to move on. She proceeded. Is she ready to speak now? No. I spent months trying to get her to talk and open up. I spent months attempting to rekindle the love and desire I previously had for her, and now she wants to chat. I apologize for being furious, but this genuinely bothers me, I responded fiercely. So now what? She asked. Have you received the wonderful news yet? Sammy, Jazelle's former boyfriend, is in jeopardy. He attempted to reintroduce himself into her life after she had abandoned him for good. The police were contacted and he was eventually apprehended. It turned out that additional ladies were aware of his behavior and had filed complaints. I believe someone has spread rumors about him. Why am I not surprised it was you, Jim? I choose to shift the subject. Amanda, as a representative of the court, you should know better, I responded. I have never accused you, Amanda. But now I realize the reality. Do not worry. I will keep your secret. I hope the troublemaker gets what he deserves. I replied, I agree. We both seek justice. Okay, I'll make arrangements for you to meet Jazelle next Saturday afternoon at the Charo Bar. She's been here before. Jim, how are you holding up? What is it? She asked. It still aches, but my new job is helping, I responded. Thank you for taking care of everything, Amanda. I thanked her. Jim, you are a very good man. I respect how you tried to handle the situation before it became out of control. It's unfortunate that Jazelle didn't realize sooner, Amanda responded. Our conversation did not go well. Jim flatly refused to contemplate the prospect of reconciliation. He made it apparent that I had squandered any hope of resolving the matter, and there was no way to recover what I had lost. He felt her marriage was beyond repair and wanted to move on. In the end, I had to accept that our marriage had ended. I had no option but to accept defeat. When I heard his words and saw the determination in his eyes, I realized I had made a big mistake. It was impossible to persuade him otherwise. If I had spotted the indications sooner, we might have had a chance to save our relationship. But now it appears impossible. The most painful aspect of all of this. My love for him is unshakable and enduring. I simply didn't comprehend the extent of my emotions until it was too late. He obtained a new job, departed, and I was left with the impression that he would never return. It's difficult to understand that I've been living a life for much longer, and in far more destructive ways. My heart is weighted with emptiness. My love is no longer. He faces a prison sentence. My hubby is no longer. He is about to become my ex-husband. All we have left to do in our marriage is file for divorce. I am still in my prime. I have the option to start over. But time is running short, and soon I will be in a difficult position to start a family. I couldn't keep my first husband, whom I adored, even though I betrayed him through my infidelity. I made it plain to those who observed the incident that I had proven them incorrect. Today, I will formally sign the final documents. The divorce of the day signaled the beginning of the end. The divorce of the absolute is sealed. The approach was described as formal and empty. After finishing my exercise classes, I noticed that my life had altered considerably. Jazelle was no longer part of it. I live in another city, and my new job takes up all of my time. Despite the long, frigid evenings, I didn't have time to reflect on the recent past. Although everything appeared vacant at first, I'm now seeing the bright side of things. My IT program exceeds my expectations, and our company is making significant progress, thanks to our combined efforts. I recently moved into a wonderful house and hope to feel at home soon. Furthermore, great chances for female communication have emerged on the horizon, albeit I am cautious of new interactions. I occasionally go out on dates. I'm hoping that soon I'll be able to move on from the bad circumstance and start looking for someone wonderful again. I'm confident that this individual will not resemble Jazelle in looks, conduct, or temperament, which suits me. I've almost entirely accepted her, and I believe that if a little more time passes, the very thought of someone like her will no longer bother me. It's been approximately 4 years since I started my new life as a bachelor, and Amanda recently contacted me with excitement in her voice. She told me that she took on the case of a man who had been deceived by his wife, who happened to be Jazelle. Amanda claimed that this deceitful man has grandiose plans to leave the cheating Jazelle in anguish without leaving her or giving her money following the divorce. I thanked Amanda for the update, but I was not interested in learning what was going on with Jazelle. After saying farewell to Amanda, I realized Jazelle had taken the wrong route and it would ruin her entirely. Story 3. At Karen's invitation, I arrived at the Tumbleweed Hotel with a mix of anxiety and excitement. It was a calm hour, and I knew her aims were not for ordinary entertainment. This area was very important to both of us because it was here that we first met 13 years ago. I felt uneasy, confirming my long-held fears. There were subtle indications of cheating. For example, she stayed late at the workplace where she worked as her boss's secretary. Our intimate relationship suffered. She exhibited no desire in intimacy with me. I observed new, provocative outfits in her wardrobe, which she had never worn in front of me. The most devastating blow was her diminished interest in conversing with me, even over meals. We didn't talk much, and she rarely came home to dine with me and her 2 children, Max and Megan. Her disregard of me hurt, but I was more enraged by her mistreatment of her children. She had obviously put them on the back burner, leaving me to care for them while she chased her own ambitions. After parking the car in a nearly empty lot, I resolved to remain calm. During the conference, I believed she was going to tell the truth based on a conversation I overheard a few nights earlier. It was Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m., and she had successfully brought me here. Sitting in the car, I considered the possibility that she was with the person I suspected. I remembered my father's counsel from many years ago, which has served me well in my professional life. Don't do anything if you're not sure what to do. Do not say anything. Allow your opponent to work out the problem for himself. The less you open up, the more concerned they will be. And if they don't worry, they will be vulnerable, he told me. His words echoed in my thoughts, warning me to remain silent and watchful. By controlling my thoughts and emotions, I might gain an advantage and tactically prepare my next move. I smiled, grateful to my father for his insight. I knew he was looking out for me at this point. After uttering a silent prayer of thanks, I entered the pub and saw Karen sitting with a man I didn't recognize. It was not surprising. My company, Steinbeck Incorporated, which I created 10 years ago, consumed all of my attention throughout the day, leaving me with limited opportunity to interact with individuals at her office. As an electrical engineer, my company specialized in designing electrical wiring and other electrical systems for construction companies that need my assistance. I approached the 2 of them, and she noticed my presence and turned to face me. "Hello, Mark." She stated that without making any loving gestures or kissing me on the cheek. "A basic welcome," I stated, accentuating the words. "What's happening?" The man turned to face me. "Mr. Steinbeck, or would you prefer Mark?" We came you here today to tell you that your wife and I have been having an affair for quite some time. She stated she was tired of concealing and making excuses, so I persuaded her to tell you the entire truth. As I had anticipated, I was fairly prepared for this. Having a dictaphone in my jacket pocket offered me an advantage. I hope they have everything written down. I remained mute, not wanting to anger my father by saying something dumb. I stared at Karen, waiting for an answer from me, but I didn't respond. Maybe she assumed I was in shock and kept talking. Mark, it was really tough for me to keep this from you. I do not want you to be wounded. I'm not going to abandon you easily. Well, I cannot give up my close relationship with Jason. I hope you understand. I can't keep it from you any longer. You deserve to know, she insisted. I wasn't sure if she understood how absurd her reasoning sounded. At that point, it became clear to me that Karen, despite the fact that she never graduated from college for obvious reasons, was not as intelligent as I had previously believed. And as for the military genius she left me with, no further explanation was required. I headed to the end of the bar, where the bartender feigned to ignore what he couldn't help but hear. I ordered a draft beer, which he handed to me while discreetly sipping it. I watched how they looked at me. Both of their features were filled with bewilderment. After I finished my beer, I left. I could feel their gaze on me. I left the place. It felt pleasant for the first time in months. I thought that I had an advantage. Maybe it was just my imagination, but that is how I felt. I headed straight home. The kids were waiting for me. I greeted them with kisses, laughing, and the promise of a good weekend. They were amused and proceeded to enjoy ice cream while I explained my ideas to them. I had arranged for you to spend the weekend with Aunt Susan and Uncle Doug. My sister and brother-in-law adored Max and Megan because they were unable to conceive children themselves. As a result, Max and Megan became their favorite persons in the entire world. I knew Stu and Doug were going camping for the weekend, and now the kids were joining them. This allowed me the opportunity to do the necessary tasks. Is everything okay? Mark inquired with Doug. Doug had an incredible capacity to predict events, to be honest. Mel, I replied, along with Divorce and Karen. The kids don't know yet. His response struck me by surprise. What do you mean? I asked. I noticed a few things which he explained in person last Christmas. Karen actually paid attention to me. I refused her, and she attempted to play it off as a joke, but it didn't deceive me. He made me pledge not to tell you. I apologize for not telling you sooner. It is all right, I reassured him. I'm just grateful you agreed to care after the kids for a few days. I need time to work things out. Listen, Mark, if you need anything, please let me know, Doug offered. Thank you, Doug. I will keep that in mind, but I believe I can handle it. It will be messy, but I have evidence, and this is not a blameless state, so I should be able to bring them to justice. I explained. After I leave here, I'll go to Henry and start acting. I continued. Despite his advanced age, Henry Morgan proved to be an excellent lawyer for my organization. He remained as funny as always. He was acquainted with every court and renowned lawyer in the state, not to mention the city. Karen couldn't help but wonder what I'd do if I discovered her cheating. I should have thought she took steps to safeguard herself. She reasoned that making an intimacy arrangement with a buddy would keep me from taking dramatic actions if I happened to come across them. These were erroneous reasons, but the more I thought about them, the more they appeared to be the only plausible answer. She was concerned that I would find out about it and catch her off guard. That was exactly what I planned to do. Yes, Henry, that's the case, I explained, unexpectedly arriving at his residence. I gave him the recording in the name of the bartender who had observed my wife's unusual interaction with her lover just a few hours before. Okay, I'll serve them both on Monday, Henry confirmed. Are you heading home? Henry inquired. Yes, I think so. I don't want to warn her too soon. I will kick her out as soon as you inform me that they have been served, I responded. Malcolm indicated that he planned to interview the witness and forced him to sign an affidavit the following day, despite the fact that it was Sunday. He emphasized the necessity of speed in their training and explained his approach for hitting hard and fast, making opponents bewildered and defeated. I loved Malcolm's reasoning and thanked Henry for his assistance, expressing my condolences for my failing marriage and its impact on Max and Megan. As I left the conversation, I felt certain that Malcolm, the former ranger, and Henry, the formidable lawyer, would guide me forward. My plan was to retreat and avoid escalating the situation. I told Henry to refuse whatever my future ex-wife demanded. Knowing that her acts had been recorded would provide Henry with the leverage he needed to defeat her in court. As I drove home, I totally trusted Henry's judgment and believed his statements to be perfectly accurate. Optimism developed in me. I had the impression that this would be the last weekend before my divorce was finalized. When I got home, I was surprised to see an unusual car parked in my driveway. I immediately recognized Jason's automobile. As darkness fell, I wondered if I'd be fortunate enough to capture some evidence of their affair. I parked a few homes away and approached the house discreetly, hoping to go unseen. The lights were turned off, and as I neared the house, I spotted my neighbor Rex, who is still a police officer, bringing out the trash. I positioned myself near to an unfamiliar car so Rex could see me. He waved his hand to acknowledge my presence. I accepted his gesture and was relieved that he had noticed the existence of the car. As another witness in this case, I mentally noted the license plate number and intend to send it to Henry, along with Rex's name and address if possible. I also hope to obtain photographic evidence. I went out into the backyard pretending to gather the garbage can while Rex returned to the house. I took advantage of the chance and surreptitiously shot some photos via the sliding glass doors in the backyard. I believe modern mobile phone technology enables such clandestine filming. I was able to take approximately 10 photos of Jason and my future ex-wife performing personal things. I placed my phone aside and entered the house through the sliding glass door, making my presence known. Despite my intervention, they persisted in their behavior, exhibiting a complete lack of respect. I was seething, but I held my cool and waited for the proper moment. About 15 minutes later, I heard the front door open and close downstairs. Then I heard Jason's engine roar as he drove away. After a few minutes, I decided to return downstairs to the kitchen, passing by the bathroom. I heard the sound of a running shower. I got myself a cup of coffee and calmly waited. It was going to be a fascinating discussion. 10 minutes later, she joined me. "Are you okay?" she inquired, her voice filled with kindness. I did not say anything. I took a drink of coffee and waited for her to say something crucial. It disturbed me that she didn't ask about the kids. This woman standing in front of me was not the same as the one I married over 10 years ago. "Mark, we need to discuss. The children are currently with my sister. I believe you should know." I said, "What?" "Oh yes, when I returned home I saw that they were not there." She responded, appearing to be uninformed. She appeared worried. "Now listen, are you okay?" she stuttered. I only wanted to be honest with you. I didn't want to continue sneaking out with him. You deserve better, Mark. Jason's world revolves entirely around physicality, all the intimacy. I won't deprive you of anything while we're together, and he is aware of it and does not mind. He is a good dude. Actually, it was his idea to cease keeping things hidden from you. I couldn't resist," she confessed, her voice filled with regret. "So I can make love with my own wife. Jason does not mind." "Well, damn that. That was really generous of him," I remarked sarcastically. "Do not be sarcastic, Mark. Honesty is always the best policy." She stated as if breaking a wedding vow was an exception to the rule. I couldn't help smiling. "Mark, please say anything," she demanded. "What would you like me to say? Would you call him if I advised you to do so right away?" I asked, daring her. So when she didn't respond, I continued. "Then I have nothing else to say. But yeah, you were correct. I truly do deserve better," I remarked, suppressing my laughter. Outwardly, I stayed calm and composed. She said, "You are not a cuckold or whatever. You are my husband, a fantastic father, and I adore you," she pleaded. "Leave it alone, Karen. I am leaving. Do not wait for me," I said, hoping to get rid of her presence. She was dead to me. Monday should have been the end, and she would have become history. I set off on my way back and ended up back at Tumbleweed. When I took my seat at the end of the bar, the same bartender was on duty. There. The bar was full, especially on Tuesday night. I ordered a draft beer and casually asked the bartender, "What is going on here?" He nodded to the distant corner while gesturing at the audience. The lighting was weak, but I was able to see. Jason passionately kissed one of the girls, revealing that the cheater was now cheating on another cheater. I wasn't surprised by the circumstances. Perhaps he was not cheating on another cheater. Perhaps the other cheater knew about his other interests. I overheard it today and can testify if needed. Thank you. Perhaps I will, I responded. My wife tried a similar trick on me a few years ago, but there was no one to back me up and I had a difficult court appearance. At least I was able to keep this place. That is something. I would prefer not to have to pay half of my income in alimony. We talked for the next 4 hours straight. I made a mental point to talk to Henry about helping this person obtain justice if he would help me expose Romeo and Juliet. Weaklings should stay together. Jason never spotted me in the bar, and I was able to shoot some fantastic photos of him and his partner. I would have used them as evidence if my wife had truly believed she was alone with him. However, that will have to wait until the big event on Monday. I arrived home around 4 a.m. Josh, the bartender, and I shared a couple cups of coffee after closing because he lived upstairs from the bar and had nowhere to go. I was probably an ideal candidate for a late-night discussion. I loved the guy, and he was an excellent bartender, which was a huge advantage in my opinion. I was upset with Karen, but I wanted to sleep in my own bed, not in the guest room. There's something about a man's own bed. My wife understood this about me, which is probably why she opted to have sex in the living room rather than upstairs. I slid into bed beside her. She was awake, and I felt her hand reach out for me. I swiftly drew my hand away and rolled onto my back. It appears she did the same thing. The sun shining through the window curtains woke me up. It was around 8 p.m., and I could smell bacon frying in the kitchen. I got up, showered, dressed, and headed downstairs. She was in a good mood, convinced that everything was fine, or at least that our marriage was beyond repair. "Good morning, Sonia," she greeted me. "It smells delicious." And so it was. I was hungry. This may be the final day of our marriage, but I shouldn't have been upset about it. Tomorrow will be chaotic, but today will be a good one. I had a hunch. "I'll be by your side all day today," she said, as if it were a special treat. "Because I was being reasonable, and if you behave yourself, you might get lucky," she added with a laugh. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or be disgusted. How could my cheating wife think I'd readily accept what she was offering? I grinned back. "This morning, I need to take my car to the store to get new brakes. Maybe we can talk later." It would be difficult to avoid it, but I was determined while applying the brakes, which was true. I discreetly placed the recorder next to the kitchen phone. I predicted that she would use this phone to call him, and I was correct. The intrigue was fascinating. 3 hours later, I returned home and picked up the recorder, while she was taking out the trash. I went to my office to listen to the recording. It hurt me to hear her say she loved him, especially since I knew he didn't care about her. I couldn't wait to show her the dated photos I'd received the night before. It would definitely shock her. I was sitting in my office with mixed feelings. I realized that I got married stupidly. I was ashamed. I doubted whether it was worth divorcing her at all, given her irresponsibility for her actions. The audacity of her and her lover made any reconciliation impossible. And then there are the children. It was obvious that she didn't care about them, and that was unforgivable. The next morning, I left the house before she even woke up. Monday was the beginning of the end for her and her lover. I started my day by telling my secretary, Elizabeth, that I would not be home for the rest of the day. Being the boss had its advantages. The first thing I did was go to Henry's office, where he had news. His part-time private investigator, Malcolm, gathered information about Romeo. It turned out that Romeo was married and had 6 children, and his wife, who was 10 years older, had money and a family. She had no idea about his adventures. I instructed Henry to expose him completely and provided him with the recording and photos on my mobile phone. Henry smiled at that. "Maybe I'll have a special job for him and Malcolm when everything settles down." I knew Sue and Duck would take care of getting the kids ready for school. The thought of having to talk to them later scared me, but it was inevitable. Henry arranged for the lovers to be taken to their place of work. A restraining order was placed on her, preventing her from returning to the house, and the same applied to him. The papers were supposed to be delivered shortly before lunch. I asked Henry to make sure that it was done loudly and dramatically. I wanted both lovers to feel the pain. Later. I also asked that all the evidence against the couple be provided to Jason's wife, and it was up to her what she would do with them. I really wanted to be there when my wife was being served, and then I thought, why not? I settled down in the hallway at the moment when the waiter appeared. He didn't know me, and I didn't know him, so he just walked past me towards my wife's office. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Karen Steinbeck?" he asked. Yes, of course, she replied with a smile. I was watching her from the doorway, and at first she didn't notice me because she was busy talking to the server. He handed her a manila envelope. "You have been served," he announced. Her expression darkened. She looked at the envelope in her hand and opened it. Her face turned pale and tears began to flow. She collapsed into a chair. At that moment, her boss appeared from the office, saw her trouble, and tried to comfort her. I became more visible. She noticed me, and her eyes widened. "Mark, why?" I couldn't help myself. "Like you said, I deserve better." With that, I left. Although I was not present at this, I later found out that Jason was served in a similar way, from the realization that his life was in fact over. He lost consciousness. In the end, he lost everything: a wife, children, a house, a job. I was wrong about only one thing. Karen wasn't the biggest fool in the world. She was only the second largest. A few days later, I found myself in Henry's office, sipping a hot drink. "So, do you think you can help him, even though it's been so long since it happened?" I asked. "Yes, I think so. This woman has a lot of secrets hidden away, and she is ready to reconsider the terms of their divorce just to keep them a secret. We will try to get alimony waived if possible. Mark, haven't you realized yet that I can do anything?" He chuckled. "I'm getting better," I replied, joining in his laughter. Later that day, I sat in the tumbleweed bar and chatted with my newfound friend. "You will never have to pay alimony again. I can't tell you how grateful I am for that, especially considering how she flaunted it at the time. I'm glad I could help." I said after the divorce, Karen was left with nothing, but she miraculously managed to keep her job. A long-term relationship with her boss allowed her to avoid the consequences of her actions. This time, Jason, as already mentioned, was no more. I met with Karen the day after the momentous event. I had something I wanted to give her. I knew that I might have to endure police, but it was worth the risk. "Mark, is there really no way out? I mean, what about the kids?" I foresaw that she would play this card, and I refused her. "You haven't shown any interest in the children for months, Karen. Your new boyfriend has absorbed all your attention. Mark, he's a good man. He looks so much like you. That's why I fell in love with him at first sight. He loves me too. That's why we tried so hard to make you understand. We did this for you so that you would open up and be honest. And now you've decided to ruin us all of us, even the children. How could you?" The tears started to flow again. She really pissed me off this time. She blamed me for everything. God, I was furious. "Mark, it's not too late. We still have a chance. If that's what you want, I can make Jason understand that you have needs too. You will always be my number one. You are the father of our children. How can you be someone else? Jason is a stranger. He's not a part of us. I promise I'll make you happy if you just give me a chance." I was almost speechless. I couldn't even find the words to express my anger. It was stupid, idiotic, and pointless. She needed help, but someone else had to provide it. She was no longer a part of my life. "Karen, I came here today for 2 reasons. First of all, I will allow you an unlimited number of visits with the children, but under no circumstances, with a lover. I will also give you some money so that you can find a new place to live. But after that, you will be on your own. The condition of my generosity is that you will not dispute the divorce in any situation. If you do, I will resist with all my might. And, Karen, you have no idea what I'm capable of. Have you guessed it yet?" She stared at me. It was obvious that she was desperately hoping that I would take her back and not object to her continuing her relationship with this idiot. As I said, she needed help. Secondly, this is it. I pushed the folder towards her. "Please check the dates at the bottom of the photos," I asked. These were the photos of Jason and his mistress that I took last Saturday night. She pulled them out and stared at them. "But they are from last Saturday night. You were not his true love. I've never been one. He's a gambler. Have a happy life." I said. I got up, left the $20 bill on the table for the waitress, and left when I left the building. She stayed, shedding tears of despair. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.